So what it says is,
I'll dig that email out and say, ask him please. Because this policy or in time.
right, so I've written to about one of them. We're going to have basically.
I was trying to ask Greg.
That one is we think there's value in having.
I would think.
I mean, maybe with a writing work. In fact, shall I say that? Yeah, I'll do that.
Ist schon bonsoir.
Dr. Rosenberg?
You know, 20 years ago, it was kind of a show. Who is going to kill? Who is going to start the main?
And June's gift is oh, so all the way at the edge here. Okay, so back here is already is. Okay, so we're going to try and stand here. Okay, excellent, got it. So there's full stack, other like other gifts, and then June doesn't get a.
I think there's something for him for dinner too.
Okay, so but I'm not going to tell people that's his birthday, do I?
I don't.
I'll ask him.
Second.
Plenty of room? Yeah.
All right. I think we're 5 minutes over. So if you could make your way to your seats, that would be appreciated. These lights are really bright. And by you, I mean you standing, if you would please make your way to a seat so we can start.
Got all this.
Bubbles.
We have friends.
All right, so I give everybody half a second, so you should all be sitting, and if you're not, you're doing this wrong. My name is Lars Eggert, I chair the IETF. Welcome to Yokohama. We're very happy to be back. We're very happy that White is hosting us again here. These are always sort of my personal favorite meetings because I got to hang out with a bunch of Japanese people during the IPv6 days when White was doing the Kame stack and other things, and I was a student at ISI, and a bunch of them came out to spend some time with us in the US, and I have fond memories, and many of them are actually still around, which is amazing. So am I, which is a little bit less amazing. But welcome to Yokohama. This is the 116 plenary, and we're going to go ahead. Please wear a mask. Hopefully, I will get to this a little bit. This is the last time I'm going to show that slide, but for this last meeting, if you're participating somewhere that's relevant to the standard strike in the meeting room, you have to wear your mask. There's a capital must there to make this a bit clearer. And if you're out in the common areas, we recommend that you wear one, but you don't have to. We're doing pretty well on COVID cases. I have a few stats on that later, but they're not zero. So there is some COVID going around, which isn't surprising. And since we're all, or most of us, want to get on airplanes at the end of the week, you know, it's a good idea to mask up so that we can all go home together. That would be nice. You can, if you eat and drink in here or in the meetings, obviously take off the mask to take a sip or a bite, but please don't leave them off for sort of extended periods. And if you see somebody who sort of seems to have forgotten that, you can remind him, or you can talk to an area director or a chair or something. We don't recognize any exemption from that rule. We're happy to discuss it at length. I'm not aware of any case here, which is nice, but you got to wear a mask. If you cannot wear a mask for whatever reason, we ask that you participate remotely. And you got to wear the good masks, right? The medical masks are not sufficient. And free masks are available outside third floor registration area. There's also tests and various other sort of mask-related paraphernalia that you can use to tweak your mask if you desire. And as I said, hopefully this is the last time. There's an ongoing LLC consultation. I think Jay is going to talk about this a little later, where we ask for IETF117 in San Francisco, what should we be doing? The proposal from the LLC is that we go to a baseline of just doing whatever the local regulations at the venue are, which for San Francisco at the moment would mean more or less nothing. And we're welcome to for you to send us input on that. I don't quite remember until when the input window is open, but it's certainly still open. There's a notewell, which is a little bit of an eye chart, but you've seen this before. There's basically two components to that. One is like we have a code of conduct or guidelines for conduct, and you should please adhere to that. It makes life a lot easier for everybody involved, and it makes the environment nicer for everybody to feel like they can participate freely and openly. The second part is the more legalese things, right? Do your IPR disclosures on your contributions and so on. If this is new to you, you probably really want to read this before you come to a microphone or send an email or otherwise participate. Online meeting tips, for those of you out in MeetEcho land, your audio will be off and your video will be off when you join the call, and we ask that you keep that off to keep the bandwidth low for everybody. And you can unmute when it's your turn to speak in the queue. And we ask that you also turn on your video. It's nicer when there's a face with a voice. And if you have a headset, please use it. It makes the audio generally a lot better. And there's a whole bunch more details that you can look at while I'm rambling here. The agenda is pretty much the usual. We have presentations. Those are typically the brief updates, which means that we're only going to talk about the highlights from the different bodies here. There are longer written reports or longer slide decks that are available for you to look at from all the different bodies that we have. And for some of them, we have the opportunity to take questions from the floor and do a Q&A. And this is the March meeting, which means we have the turnover in leadership. So there'll be a bunch of thank yous and plaques and dots passed and so on. It's the first time we're doing this in person, I think. No, we did it in Vienna, but it was kind of not such an exciting affair because it was a much smaller meeting back then. So this is the first real one, I think, that I'm chairing. Thank you to everybody who helped this week happen. From our side, it's the Secretariat, the MeetEcho staff, the NOC, who's done a fantastic job as always. I want to argue it's easy in Japan because the network is really good in general, but as far as I know, there were no hiccups. The LLC and the staff, the tools team, volunteers, and hackathon support on the hackathon on the weekend again was a great success. I have some more stats on that later on in the talk. Which brings us to Murai Sensei and the host presentation. Thank you, Wide, for hosting us again in Yokohama. You've hosted us many times. It's always a pleasure. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Lars, and welcome back to Yokohama, everybody. And I'm very glad to host you again in Yokohama and in Japan, being a wide project and the other team of the host and the supporters. How this slide could work? All right. Okay. So you've been looking at the logos everywhere. All right. So first of all, I really want to thank all the kind of sponsors listed in here. I'm not telling all the names, but I really appreciate without their support, then we cannot achieve this conference. And then I see a lot of food again, and I hope you enjoyed, but also, coming from all the support. But so thank you very much for the sponsors, and thank you. Without their support, we cannot make it. And one more, the WIDE project. Let me briefly talk about the WIDE project. The WIDE project has been the research consortium in this country since the mid-80s. So it's been the project, but it's been kind of a long-term project. And we do have Asia Pacific things. So I'm very glad to report you that the WIDE project has been more than 35 years. We've been running very successfully, and then during the COVID period, then we turned out to be pretty much a stable background and organization institute. So therefore, we started during that past 2 years the infrastructure called the Arena Park for the Asia Pacific Research and Educational Network, and we've been working on a quantum internet things and en-route server operation and operation of the research and educational network, as well as the research and the education in many ways. So let me briefly introduce that. There is a host presentation series as a quantum internet, which is now the large portion of the WIDE project activities. And probably the presentation is going to be tomorrow by Shota Nagayama and Rod Van Meter. So please enjoy. And finally, enjoy IETF. Thank you very much. Oh, great.
We have a plaque for June, and we have a photographer, and we got to stand here.
All right.
We're going to hold it like this, I think. If you tell us what the angle is. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, it's pretty heavy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So normally we also give a gift to the host, and we don't do that tonight. And the reason is that Morai Sensei is spending his birthday with us today, and he's getting his present later on at dinner. So happy birthday. Thank you for being here. No, Japan consistently sort of gets, I think, amongst the best feedback of venues that we go to. And so I'm happy that we're here, and I'm happy that we're hopefully going to be back sooner than the last time. The gap was a little long. COVID didn't help in coming back here soon. Right, next up, we're talking about IETF 17 very briefly, which is going to be in San Francisco at the end of July. The host for that is Nokia, who I used to work for actually for a little while. So I'm very pleased that Nokia is still around as one of the global hosts. No, not as a company, as a global host who is for probably longer than I've participated in the IETF, has really supported the organization. They're one of the global hosts, which is our sort of select category of top sponsors that are really making all of this possible. Without the global hosts, there wouldn't be any IETF. And Nokia is one of them, and they're hosting us in San Francisco, which is always a good location for the IT industry for some reason. And we're happy that they're doing that. Thank you, Nokia. We're looking forward to being there in July. And while Nokia is the global host, we have a number of other sponsorship opportunities because we have the hackathon, we have diversity and inclusion. You might have seen the childcare, for example, up there on the 4th floor. So if that's interesting to you and your companies, it's possible to sponsor that. Come talk to us. There's an email address on the slide that you can just email right now, and we'll take it from there. Thank you. And thank you, Nokia, again. Next up, we have the IETF chair and ISG report. And as I said before, this is the short version. The long version has been emailed out, or it has been available in the data tracker, so you can find it there under meeting materials. And you can send us feedback. There's a bunch of questions in there that we have. We're going to start with something that, here it's coming. Basically the usual slides on participant statistics and unfortunately COVID. I'm looking forward when we don't have that slide anymore, but that's just me. Well, it's not just me. Planning for future meetings, sort of an overview of what the ISG has been up to in terms of making announcements and statements, and then some sort of teaser of the other topics that are in the written report but are not here. In terms of statistics, we had a very good meeting. Do we actually have exactly 1,000 people registered for onsite? Okay. I've been since the weekend when I arrived, I was like, we're going to make the 1,000, we're going to make the 1,000. And I guess we did make the 1,000, which is excellent. So I think we're back to almost pre-COVID levels. I think especially for an Asian meeting, which always have a little bit mix in attendance records, but this is very strong. So we had 300 something, if I remember, in Vienna a year ago. We were about 600 something in Philadelphia, and I think we were roughly the same in London, I want to say. Cindy's checking out. So this is a bump up now, going back to the 4 digits, which is very good. And we had a really strong remote participation also with 740. You know that there are fee waivers for in-person and for remote attendance. Just reporting, so there were 382 for remote attendance that we granted, and out of them 250 something were used, which is a pretty sizable amount. For the on-site fee waivers this time, Colin Perkins, the IETF chair, and myself, we basically give them out based out of our discretionary budget. And the IETF, I only received 2 for this meeting, and I granted 1. And Colin 7 and 6. And I haven't talked to Colin, but I assume a lot of those went to local universities where people wanted to come, and that's typically what they're for. And Colin is shaking his head, so he can tell you later where they went. The hackathon I mentioned before is very strong this time. Over 400 people participating, 360 on-site, and a very solid remote participation as well. 72 of the people that were at the hackathon were there only for the hackathon. Which might seem a little bit surprising, but I've found that specifically open source projects, really sort of the hackathon is the thing that they come for. And most stay around for a little bit, but some of them actually sort of really see the value in the hackathon and not so much the IETF, which is sort of an interesting sort of trend, because originally we thought we would do the opposite, but this is really, really nice to see. And you can see the usual breakdown by country. Unsurprisingly, this time Japan is a much larger slice of the pie than normal. But otherwise, it's the usual mix of countries, I think, that we would expect here. And we're going to obviously collect statistics. So this is a snapshot as of sometime today. Friday, we might have 1,001, who knows? This is the breakdown of those participant stats again, because we were interested in seeing what the differences are between the on-site and the remote participant groups. And they're roughly like the same size, like at least the same order of magnitude. And you can see, not surprisingly, right, the mix is slightly different, but I'm sort of interested to see that apparently US is still quite a bit remote. Might be that people are not traveling here because it's a long flight and they have San Francisco coming up. I would have this is the first time I see those as well, so I would have expected maybe a little bit more the US on the on-site, but Japan obviously very strong representation, which is very nice to see. As I mentioned before, right, we had always had a solid participation from Japan since the 90s. And it's very good to see that this has sort of been kept up all the way through COVID. And now it's really, since we're here, obviously going really high. This is a slide that comes from Greg Wood's sort of report that he did on the IETF in 2022. And on the left column, when we talk about participants, it is basically aggregate, and on the right column, it's unique. So overall, we had 6,650 roughly people that participated in meetings. And if you went to all three, you count 3 times in the left column. And if you only went to, and if you went to all 3 and you're a unique participant, you count once on the right column here. As I said, the meetings had like between 300 and maybe 700 participants. And if you add that up to 2,047, you can see that there's actually quite a bit of people, I think, that remained more local still in 2022. And that means that there's a discrepancy between the unique and the overall. There's statistics about documents and working groups and a whole bunch of other things. I'm not going to go through them all, other than to say there is a written report that's available, I think, from the LLC website. Greg is saying there's a URL on the slide. Is that what they're pointing? So if you are interested, you can find that and a lot more statistics in terms of what happened in 22 to the IETF. There's one more slide here. This is taken from the all of IETF survey that we've done for the second time last year. And we're sort of breaking down out of those participants that we had that had interaction with us, what's their geography and what's their gender identification. And you can see that geographically, it's North America and Europe, and then a whole bunch of sort of Asia and other countries. So this is I think more or less what we were expecting. The right-hand side, we're just looking at sort of identified gender, and that is a little bit disappointing because if you look just at the male to female, woman to male ratio, it is actually worse than the tech industry, right? And the tech industry is not a very high bar to reach, but we are significantly off from that, right? And that is a problem, and the LLC specifically really thinking about what we can do here, because this is not how it should be. If you have opinions about that or suggestions for what the LLC specifically could do, we're very happy to talk about this. This is the COVID cases, and we have a bar graph that I also see for the first time here. So you can see that we are surprisingly tracking pretty low. So I should say that for the past meetings, the numbers are cases at the end of the week. And for this week, for obvious reasons, it's cases up until today, I'm guessing. So the number might spike up, because if you have a good memory, you might remember that when I was in London, I said we only have 3 cases, and then at the end of the week, we had 32 cases. So there was quite a bump at the end of London. I'm confident we can avoid this in Yokohama. I really hope we're going to stay at the 4. But I mentioned masking before. COVID's still a thing, and maybe don't get casual at the end of the week because you already feel like you're halfway home. But it's good to see also that you see that in-person attendance has obviously gone up, while our COVID cases have remained quite low. I remember in Vienna, we had a COVID officer from the city that was with us for the week. And we were significantly, like by an order of magnitude, I think, under what the city of Vienna estimated we would have, based on their experience of other meetings in Vienna at the time. So we did a really good job in Vienna, and I think we've sort of managed to do a really good job throughout the last year when we talk about the COVID cases at the IETF. So good job, everybody. It's really paid off. ISG statements and announcements. We did one announcement, and that was basically reappointing Stefan Wenger as the ISG representative on the IETF Trust. This came with some delay because, frankly, it was forgotten for a while that the ISG had to reappoint or appoint somebody, and Stefan was really nice and just kept serving in his role while we caught up and managed to reappoint him. So his term, if I remember correctly, now ends next spring, I think at the March IETF. So thank you, Stefan, for serving, and thank you for just continuing to serve while we forgot that we had to do something. That was extremely nice of you. Thank you. And we published two ISG statements. One is the report on the RFC 8989 experiment. If you don't recall, that is the experiment for NOMCOM eligibility that counts participation, remote participation in fully online and hybrid meetings as NOMCOM qualifying. And Rich Sauls, the NOMCOM chair this year, wrote this for us. Thank you for that. It's pretty extensive. You can take a read. And with the impeding publication of the new Elegy RFC that basically takes that eligibility of remote participants forward, we will end this experiment. So this is the second year of this, and it's the final year of this. Second statement is basically an update of a previous one that talks a little bit more about you as a working group chair, if you're hosting an interim meeting, especially one that has an in-person component where you're inviting your working group to come somewhere in between the IETF meetings, what you sort of should know about and what you should consider. And especially if you're a working group chair, take a look. If you're not a working group chair, you can also read it and you remind your working group chair what they did wrong. That is also highly appreciated, but it's specifically sort of meant to guide the working group chairs. Right, other topics that I'm not going to go into. We didn't have any appeals. This is where we get applause for not having appeals. And you get applause for not appealing anything. Thank you very much. And there's a whole slew of additional written reports from the IAB, the LLC board, the Secretariat, and IANA available in the data tracker URL. And there's a blog that Greg Wood, our communications director, is sort of filling with content that's sort of meant to go out into the greater universe and talk about the IETF and promoters. If you have topics that you think should be on that blog, you are very welcome to talk to Greg, who's always sort of on the lookout for hot topics in the IETF that might have sort of some broader implications and can be presented to sort of a more general audience. It's important that we remind people that we exist and the work that we do, and Greg is the person to talk to about that. Right, this is a little joke slide. Greg took a photo, and we had the eBPF buff, and there's a question, what the hell does eBPF mean? And then we had a great idea, and we're renaming it, like we're renaming everything in the IETF, and we're going to call it Unix Beauty Innovation, which is kind of what eBPF is, and it's going to make the Linux people really angry, but it took us a while to actually determine what the Japanese characters underneath meant, because we didn't want to show anything that was particularly offensive, and I think we got convinced that it's okay, because it apparently means the same thing. If you wonder what that is, you're welcome to go to it. It's in one of the malls, I hear. I think it's a hairdresser. So welcome, UBI. Also welcome kids. I mentioned before, for diversity and inclusivity, we have a sponsor category, and one of the things that gets sponsored there is childcare, which is free to all participants, kids that want to take advantage of that. We ask that you please let us know early if you can, because that way we can sort of talk to the caregivers about, what they need to provide and what kind of age levels and languages they need to support. LLC is trying to take this forward into perpetuity, so we're definitely going to do it for all of this year's meetings, and I haven't heard anybody say that we shouldn't do it going forward, so you can basically plan on that being available at an IETF meeting. So feel free to take advantage of this if that makes your participation in person easier, for various reasons. Just please do use it. It's there to be used. There's no point in having a room that's empty. The caregivers have a lot more fun if there's actually kids there. And I think we had 6 or 7 this week, and I don't know if we had any walk-ins, but that's a pretty good number, and we're happy with that. But we can support more if there's more demand. This is not sort of, there's no limit that has been reached here yet. So please let the Secretariat know. I guess you can email support at any time. You can also reply to the announcement that will go out before 117. Specifically, do use it. Next up, I'm going to pass over to one of the former IETF chairs, Russ Housley.
Thanks, Lars. So a little over 15 years ago, when I was in my first term as IETF chair, we went out and competed the contract for the secretariat and picked someone who was not the incumbent at that time. And so in February 2008, AMS became the contractor serving as the IETF secretariat. So, of course, on this slide with the February dash today, all the work is in the dash. And that is, you know, the great work they continue to do, they do every day. They pivoted to make it all work during COVID, and they've done tremendous things as a partner with the IETF. And so we just thought we'd put up a slide with some pictures as the staff has changed over the years and so on. But I'd appreciate it if the people from the Secretariat that are in the room, if you'd stand up and give applause for 15 years of good work.
No, and thank you, Russ. That's very kind. And I kid you not, right? So the IETF would fall apart if we didn't have them. Specifically, the ISG and IB would grind to a halt if we weren't handled correctly. It's not visible from the outside. You always think it's us that are doing all the work, but it's actually AMS that's keeping us on track and saying, "Did you do this? Did you remind us on this?" So thank you personally for doing that. We all benefit greatly, and I most of all. Right, the next one is also a pleasure. So our friends at the ITU, which is a standards body that we have a very long and very good relationship with, recently had a new leadership selection. And since we were in Japan, we thought it would be a good opportunity to have one of the incoming ITU leadership come talk to us for a few minutes. So Noe-san, who is the director of the ITU TSB. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and coming to say hi.
Thank you. Thank you, Russ-san. Hello, everyone. And also, I very much appreciate this opportunity to be here and to talk to you a little bit. Probably, please give me 4 minutes. Okay. And yes, I'm Seizo Noe. Until last year, I lived in Japan. But now I have already moved to Geneva and started working for the ITU as a director of Telecommunication Standardization Bureau. So this morning I came here to Japan. So thank you for the opportunity to be here to Japan. And actually, I could meet my wife for the first time in 3 months. Thank you. And actually, my priority is promote the adoption of the new technologies, supporting standards every corner in the world. And as a United Nations Specialized Agency for ICT, ITU is work to ensure that everyone benefit from advances in ICT. We are supported in the endeavor by our collaboration with IETF. Actually, one of my commitments during my election campaign is a new collaboration frameworks. So I wanted to meet many standard organizations as many and as early as possible. So that's why I'm here now here. So very happy to meet Russ-san and also you. This very great opportunity to strengthen our collaboration for the future. Thank you. And let me take this opportunity to highlight my gratitude to all experts that participate in the work of both ITU and IETF. This dual participation is a very practical and highly effective way of coordinating our work. ITU standards make multiple references to IETF RFCs. And also our work on transport networks and video as well as the audio coding receives essential support from ITU collaboration with IETF. Other key areas of the collaboration include MPLS, TP, OAM, media gateway control protocols, signaling protocols, IP performance measurement, and quality of services, X.509, digital certificate, cybersecurity, and ENAM. I just read listed here. But anyway, we need to collaborate more and more. In some cases, if it's some problem, we need to improve that. And anyway, our collaboration will continue to grow in importance alongside the acceleration of the digital transformation across the economies. ITU standards are supporting digital transformation in areas including energy, mobility, healthcare, financial services, agriculture, and smart cities. Our standards are also helping everyone to capitalize on the advances in 5G and beyond. AI and machine learning, quantum information technology, and blockchain. ITU's strategic plan rests on the two pillars, universal connectivity and sustainable digital transformation. The spirit of collaboration and consensus that drives international standardization is exactly the spirit we need to achieve this. We must continue to foster a collaborative spirit among standard developers and a growing range of stakeholders in standardization. Our collaboration helps to position everyone for success. And I thank you all very much for the key part that you play in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We had assumed you were still in Japan. I feel humbled that you flew extra special for us to back home, and I hope you got something on top of it just in coming to our plenary. So thank you again, and I fully agree that the collaboration between the IETF and the ITU and other standards bodies is vital, right? We're not in this isolation. We're building the global network together, and opportunities like this where we can reach out and talk to each other are really important to meet, and also to maybe later on avoid misunderstandings that make everything just very complicated and sometimes painful. So I'm very pleased that we're going to have a strong continuation of the relationship that we've had. So thank you for coming, and welcome. Right, this brings us to the IAB, which I should have known because Mirja is coming in up to the stage. Thank you.
So hello, everybody. My name is Mirja Kühlemann. I'm the chair of the IAB, and I'm here to give you a very short update, as always. So all the important information is in the report that you find online, but just like to provide some highlights, you might have noticed that we've been working on a couple of IAB statements lately. And this is probably because we've seen a lot of interest from the policy side in the internet. So we try to actually provide some input there and give our views wherever we can, depending on our capacity. So that's just something I wanted to highlight. But again, you'll find more information in the report. Then, as always, I take this opportunity to thank some people that are serving in certain positions for us. So good news, we reappointed Colin Perkins as IRTF chair. And then we also worked on some of the liaison management. So Warren was reappointed as ICANN Technical Liaison Group appointee. And then we have new liaison managers for 3GPP, who is Charles Eckel, and a new liaison manager for IEEE 802.1, who is Janos Fakas, sorry. I should know your name. And then I also have the pleasure to announce that the IAB reselected me for another year as IAB chair. Thank you for that. So I'm serving as IAB chair already 3 years now, and so I took the opportunity when I was thinking about do I want to do it for another year to look a little back about what the IAB is doing. And I asked Cindy to prepare these really nice slides for me to actually show that we're doing a little bit of work. So these are 3 slides for 3 years, and it gives just some high-level overview of what we're doing. They're actually not complete. We're doing much more stuff. But it shows you that we're doing something, right? So like this is when I started as a chair, and you might remember 3 years ago, there was like a huge handover, and like 6 people were changing positions in the IAB. So it took us a while to get started, but as soon as we like heated up, we did a lot of work. This included that we established, for example, the IAB open meeting, which I hope you all enjoy, and can continue doing like since then. We created the new program, the EDM program. We finished some RCs, we wrote some statements and so on, and you have time, you can't probably really read this, so you have time to look at this later on your own. If we go to the next year, it looks even a little bit busier. So again, some work on like closing groups, but also opening reopening, not reopening, just opening groups. Some RCs, some statements, all these kind of things we're doing. And then if we go to year 3, it's like even more busy. So we're keeping up, taking more work. We have a couple of documents going on, and I'm quite proud that this is working so well. And I would thank everybody on the IAB for their work. Okay, and then continuing that path, I just want to quickly announce other IAB stuff that's going on this week. So the IAB open meeting that I already mentioned is happening tomorrow. So please join us there if you want to discuss with us about some of the technical topics or provide other kind of feedback. And then we have something new, which is the IAB Liaison Coordinators office hours on Thursday. So if you're interested, or if you have any question or concern about liaison management, that's the place where you can come and talk to us. And that's it from my side. Thank you.
So there were a lot of exclamation marks on those slides, Mirja, but that's because the IAB is doing a really good job. So thank you for that. Maybe we need more exclamation marks on the ISG side of things. Right, which brings up Colin Parkins, the reappointed chair of the IETF.
Thank you, Lars. I will try to be more excitable. Get some more exclamation marks going. I just can't do it. All right, so to start with, just a reminder of the goals of the IETF. The IETF is the sort of parallel organization to the IETF, which is here to conduct research rather than as part of the standards process. As part of that, we're organized as a number of research groups. And I'm very pleased to announce that we've got 2 new research groups meeting for the first time at this IETF meeting. The first of these is the Usable Formal Methods Research Group, which met this morning. Had a really excellent meeting trying to look at some of the issues with using formal methods to develop protocol standards, and trying to understand some of the what are the benefits of doing this and why it's difficult, and trying to improve this and try and improve the usability of formal methods for protocol standards. The second of these groups is the Research and Analysis of Standards Setting Processes Research Group, which is meeting tomorrow for the first time. The goal of this group is to explore how the standards setting process works, to try and understand the process, the composition of the community, its diversity, the impact it has, the impact that diversity has on the standards process, and understand the process by which the community makes decisions, the interactions between the IETF, the other standards developing organizations, and the interactions within the IETF community. The goal here is to understand the standards process, and by understanding, hopefully, be able to improve it and to make the process work better. In addition to the research groups, we also run the Applied Networking Research Prize. This is sponsored by the Internet Society, and we're very grateful also to Comcast and NBC Universal for their support for the ANRP. The prize is awarded for the best recent results in applied networking, for interesting new research ideas of potential relevance to the internet standards community, and to potentially support upcoming people that are likely to have an impact on the internet standards process and internet technologies. I'm very pleased to announce the 2 winners for the Applied Networking Research Prize for this meeting. Boris Pismeni for his work on novel NIC offloading architectures, and Arthur Seller Jacobs for his work on evaluating machine learning for network security. We had two really excellent award talks in the IETF Open meeting on Monday. If you were not able to attend that meeting, I would really encourage you to watch the recordings, which are available on the IETF channel on YouTube. As I say, some really great talks there. So please do congratulate the awardees, and please do watch the talks. And in addition to the prize talks, we also run the Applied Networking Research Workshop, which co-locates with the July IETF meeting and is organized in conjunction with ACM SIGCOM. I'm also pleased to announce that the TPC chairs for this meeting will be Francis Yan from Microsoft and Maria Apostolaki from Princeton. Call for papers for that workshop is out just now, and you should see an announcement for that very shortly. So please do submit. Please do consider submitting your research to the workshop. And I'm also pleased to note that both of the TPC chairs are previous ANRP winners. So it's good to see people coming back to the community. And with that, that's all I have. So I'd like to hand over to Rich Seltz for the NUMCOM.
Thanks, Colin. And while Rich comes up, I'm very sort of happy that the ANRP and ANRW have such a strong continued presence in the IETF, and they really brought in a bunch of excellent people. Many of them are actually sticking around. I think we recently looked at whether we're able to keep the participation up, and it's been working really well. So we're very pleased with that. Thank you. Rich, this is your slice of the talk, of the plenary.
Okay, my last time in front of you. You're all relieved. Okay, so I'm going to give a summary on how things went with the past NOMCOM. Some things happened. We got a late start because of COVID illnesses. We got a late start because of our own standards got in the way of our own implementation. Yeah, DMARC made us start to use mailing lists rather than aliases for the internal communications. And we didn't really notice because every time, for example, I tried to mail somebody, it worked, but when somebody sent mail through the mailing list, it got silently dropped. So I made a bunch of mistakes that wasted some time and effort. We had a couple of appeals. I'll talk about those on the next slide. Scheduling was very hard. We had, I believe, 4 people in China. We had one person in Australia. We had 3 people in Europe, both coasts of America. So it's really tough to do scheduling. I think we should just come up with a single time zone. It would make it a lot easier. We met pretty regularly. First, while we were setting things up, almost weekly, we had good attendance. Very few people made all of the meetings. There were a few that made not only all the meetings and all of the interviews, to which we'll thank them later, or we've thanked them internally. We shortened, what we did to compress the schedule is we shortened the time for the questionnaires. Basically, you had a little under 2 weeks as opposed to 5 weeks. The interviews, we made 45 minutes, and we synced it to the IETF session times during London. That worked really, really well. I suggest next year's chair does that. We made it. We were able to get the slates, pick slates, get them confirmed all by the deadlines in the RFC. Appeals. So there were 2 appeals. One was that when a volunteer stopped responding, and this was a voting volunteer, one of the 10, when they stopped responding, I'd written them and said, yes, they want to do it. Lost track of them. Turns out they were away for the weekend, whatever. So I said, okay, I went down to the next person on the slide. This was after consulting with the past 4 NOMCOM chairs. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to pick the next person, the 11th. That was appealed. Somebody raised the issue that, well, according to the RFC 8713, we should rerun the whole selection process. Announce the seeds, wait a bit, run the process again. After a decision, Andrew, who was the appealing top appeal authority, upheld the decision. The action so that this doesn't happen again is that I filed an errata that says the RFC is unclear, it doesn't follow what the practice is. The second appeal was I had to disqualify an incumbent who said they did not see the emails came from my personal account. They did not see the reminders to send in their questionnaire. One of the points in their appeal was that it was previously we tried a lot harder to reach candidates. Let me in. I should be, considered even though I haven't gotten the questionnaire done. The decision also was upheld. During the code sprint, we made the change to remind people when we accept their nomination that you should be subscribed to IETF Announce. This person was not subscribed to IETF Announce. And also, as we've said several times, including earlier this evening, the IETF conducts its business on its mailing lists. And if mail to IETF Announce gets dropped into spam folders or what have you, it's hard to say it's our fault. Candidates and feedback. We had 45 individual candidates. I think we interviewed 25 of them during the IETF in London. We had 748 comments from the IETF community. That seems like a lot to me. People like numbers, so the number of comments we got ranged from 3 to 40. The mean was 16. Standard deviation, I don't even know what that is, but I just ran it through a Python script, and there we go, it's 9.2. Pretty much, all of the comments were read by all of the volunteers, and the community feedback, more importantly, was taken very seriously by the voting people. At the start of every deliberation, we had a chart, a summary chart of the comments and some, analysis of what were positive, what were negative, what were, neutral or indeterminate. I like Lars, but I really hate his shoes. Is that a positive or negative? I don't know. It's a negative. No, net positive. We were tasked this year. We had a task for 16 positions. 4 of them ran unopposed. Some were more understandable than others. Among those we picked an AD who was on his 3rd term. That means they'll be doing years 5 and 6. Another AD was picked for their 4th term, which means, I guess, 7 and 8. And then there was a potential 5th term, which would have been years 11 and 12, 9 and 10, but instead we put them on the IAB because that's the way it goes. You'll see the results. They were announced, they were posted in a public blog, and you'll see them all appear in front later on. So for more information, one of the things we did this year is we decided to make our wiki publicly readable for a short period of time at any rate. So if you want to see the mechanisms and the mechanics of what's involved, you can skim the wiki. It's in nc2020.privatewikis.ietf.com. It was posted to the IETF at mailing list, or ask me what the URL is and I'll show it to you. Read the second RFC 8989 report. End result is, then we probably could have dropped one of the paths, but overall it was successful, and it's okay that we've enshrined that in 8989 bis. Skip that. The Gen Dispatch session, I presented some issues and concerns that we had. We're going to come back with some other more specific information as requested. The forthcoming tell-all, one of the things I had promised Andrew was that I would document this because nobody really understands what's involved in in NOMCOM. You might know what's involved in being an NOMCOM member, but being an NOMCOM chair, if you have to understand that basically you are unavailable for the November IETF meeting, and that between November and January or until you're done, it's a full-time job. Fortunately, several potential candidates have come up to me, or people who were nominated have come up to me, and I've talked with at least one, and I have 2 more scheduled over the rest of the week. With that, I am done. Thank you. And thank you all for contributing, and particularly the NOMCOM for their service.
Thank you. Yeah, the work of the NOMCOM is really essential to the operation of the IETF, and then we're very glad that year after year we able to run the process and we get a good selection at the end. And so, if you have a chance, thank the members of the NOMCOM again if you've done it before, because it's really a vital role that they play in the organization. Next up is Jay actually, talking for the IETF LLC.
Thank you. So I'm Jay Daly, the IETF Executive Director, doing the first part of the IETF LLC report. So first of all, thank you very much to our meeting host, Wide. Thank you. We could not have done it without Wide. It's been a fabulous meeting so far, our largest since COVID. This is going very well. For those of you that don't know, WIDE Project is a consortium. And so it has, within it, it went out and did the fundraising amongst its own sponsors. And so we have a number of sponsors to thank within WIDE. We'll do them on a slide basis. So we have the platinum sponsors, Internet Initiative Japan and NTT, two very large ISPs within Japan. Thank you very much for your support for this meeting. And then we have multiple gold sponsors. Thank you very much as well for that. And then finally, the silver sponsors from WIDE, thank you. And the bronze sponsors, thank you very much. So as you can see, that's over 20 companies, so that's a great consortium. Our connectivity has been provided by Docomo and KDDI, so thank you very much for that. We always find ourselves getting excellent free internet connectivity from local providers. It's one of the nice things about the IETF that people feel that they should support it within their businesses in this way. Thank you. As some of you know, we have a number of meeting sponsorships that are related to specific values where certain companies feel an alignment with the IETF. And so one of these is diversity and inclusion that pays for such things as the childcare that we have today and for fee waivers and other things. So thank you very much to our gold diversity and inclusion sponsors for making that available. And we have the running code sponsorship that pays for the hackathon, amongst other things. Thank you very much to our sponsor there. And then we have sustainability, which is a new sponsorship, and Oracle are now our new gold sustainability sponsor. And that will be used to pay for some of our carbon offsetting work and other things later on, which I'll talk about later on another slide. So thank you very much there as well. And of course, just to mention our other sponsors, so we have various different levels of sponsorship, and we're pleased to see that organisations come in at the level that suits us, that suits them, and still are able to support us. So thank you very much for that, these other sponsors. We receive an enormous amount of equipment and services for free. I think I've mentioned this before, but Cisco and Juniper give us extraordinary amount of equipment and services. Cloudflare have been fantastic. Every time we ask them, can we use a new part of your service for free, they say yes. And then we've started to recognize some of the smaller organizations as well that provide things. And then we're missing one as well, Identity Digital, that do things for us as well. So thank you very much to all those people that provide free services for us. So we have a number of volunteers and a number of members of staff that put on the production of an IETF meeting. So the code sprint are those people that come in and spend the Saturday and Sunday working on the data tracker, which of course is our main piece of software that people use all the time. So thank you very much to those volunteers there. And then thank you to the NOC volunteers and the NOC local volunteers. This is a new list on the right. may not be aware of this. So these are local volunteers, largely found, I think, through WIDE, who have helped out with the NOC this time, supplementing the work of our normal NOC volunteers. And of course, our normal NOC volunteers are supported by their companies, in most cases, able to come here and work extensively on the network. So they spend the entire week largely in the NOC office, ensuring that things run smoothly. So thank you very much to all of the NOC volunteers. And then finally, the team, largely, well, most of the team. We have the Secretariat, who we introduced to earlier. We have MeetEcho, again, who spend the entire time watching large screens with multiple people talking at once, one of the most difficult jobs here. The tools team, we have the NOC contractors, and we have the LLC staff. So thank you very much for everyone that makes this a success for us. And that, don't need to clap on this one because my picture's on it, but that's the staff of the IETF LLC for you, a diverse bunch. Right, oh, thank you. And then finally, thanks to our global hosts and global supporters. These are the people who have a long-term support of the IETF and who enable us to meet regularly. And without them, really, there would be very little of this type of interaction. So thank you very much to all of them for their support. So as noted, we have IETF117 coming up in San Francisco in July. And registrations will open, I think, about a month from now. So we should have that there. We understand, of course, that some people will be anxious about visas for going to that. We'll be doing what we can with letters of invitation to support and help people to come there. So we look forward to seeing you all and in July in San Francisco. Thank you. So for future meeting locations and venues, we have San Francisco in July of this year. We have Prague in November, and we're still looking for a meeting host for Prague, if anybody's interested. IETF119 in Asia next year, the negotiations have been a bit tricky, so we're not able to announce that yet, but we're hoping that that will resolve itself soon. Then we have Vancouver, one of our rearranged meetings, in IETF120. IETF121 is in Dublin, in the Convention Centre Dublin. And again, we're looking for a meeting sponsor for that, meeting host, sorry. We then have Bangkok and Madrid, which are also two rearranged meetings. And then our first of our meetings that we're now planning ahead is North America, IETF124 in November 2025. So we have a reasonably full set of meetings, just one gap with 119 there, but we have a relatively large gap of meeting hosts. So we're hoping to pick that up soon and have that arranged. So one of the things that the IETF LLC is charged with is the financial management of the IETF. And one of our goals here is long-term financial sustainability, sorry. And our main vehicle for that is the IETF endowment. We have a goal of trying to reach 50 million by 2027, and currently we're around about the 4 million mark. For that, we want to thank some of our donors here. We have ARIN, Internet Society, and RIPE NCC, our flagship donors, who give us very large contributions to, which is enabling the endowment to grow. So thank you very much to them. And then to our benefactor donor, LACNIC, who gave us a large donation last year. And then to all of those of you individual donors who donate when you register for the meeting. This time round, we had 75 gifts and a total of $3,300. And each of these donations is matched 2-to-1 by the Internet Society. So thank you very much to all of those donors for supporting our long-term sustainability. So one of the projects that the IETF LLC is working on is towards a net zero IETF. So we have been working on calculating IETF emissions and had some consultants develop a tool for us to be able to do that with. We're working on more sustainable in-person meetings using eco-friendly materials and trying to reduce food waste. I'm sure you could help with that. And we're also aiming to offset emissions. We're still to decide what schemes to support, and we are very much considering schemes that fit with the IETF. So some of the more financially oriented schemes, I suspect, would not fit with the IETF culture. We have a side meeting tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. For anybody who wants to come along to talk about this, to help us understand what type of schemes we should be going forward with for offsetting emissions. So this is now going to be a part of our strategy ongoing to try to reduce our emissions. And then just to note that we have 2 key consultations underway. We have a meeting fee review. And for those of you who have not seen this, we are proposing an increase in fees for meetings across the board. It's quite a significant increase as it is intended to catch up with inflation over several years. And we are proposing that take effect from IETF117 San Francisco. The feedback period for that closes on Monday, so you can see the announcement on our announcement archive. And the other one, as Lars has already mentioned, is that we are proposing a change to our COVID policy, again from IETF 117 San Francisco, where we will stop imposing our own requirements and switch to following the local requirements, whatever they are, which in San Francisco will mean no mask wearing. And the feedback period for that closes on Monday, 17th of April. And for both of these, you are welcome to send me feedback directly or to the public admin discuss list. And finally, not on the slide, but we have run an experiment, some of you may have seen at this meeting, with closed captioning. We have used some live transcription services in some rooms, and we've used automated ones in the other. This is one step. We're expecting to develop this further over a number of meetings to get to a position where we think it is as useful as possible. And if that means that we have to invest much more in live transcription, then we will do. That's just the way forward with it. So we'll be asking about that in the post-meeting survey, but you're also welcome to let me know how that goes. So over now to Jason Livingood, Board Chair.
Thanks, Jay. So as we're getting started, I did want to make one observation and thank the tools team that's done a lot of work over the past couple of years to improve the tools. This is the first meeting I can remember when I click from the main homepage to the meeting page and then the agenda. It just happens in a snap. And I always remember being bothered by that being a few seconds or longer, especially when we're all clicking on the same thing. So I really appreciate all their work and hope they keep it up. So let's move on here. First, I'd like to thank one of our departing board members who's term limited and completed his service earlier this month, Peter van Rusta. Peter's not here today, he's based in Belgium, but we really appreciate his service and thank him very much. So if we could just have a round of applause for Peter. Thank you, Peter. And he was on the board from the first formation of the LLC, formally. So appreciate his long service. In terms of current board members, these are everyone here. The new one is someone that you probably all recognize from different venues, both here and maybe at RIPE and elsewhere, Miriam Cunha. And she is online right now. She wasn't able to attend in person, but we welcome her to the board, and she attended her first meeting just earlier this month. So we appreciate her and welcome her to the community in a new way. Thanks. So let's talk about the current work of the LC. We are planning a June retreat. We do these annually, a strategic planning retreat. We're doing the typical sort of update of the, sort of risks and issues and strengths and so on. We're also looking at financials, which we'll talk about in a second. And of course, the future of hybrid meeting administration and the cost basis for that. I'll also speak to that in another slide. And then we look at our annual survey results. We build action plans based on the community feedback that's found in there. And we continue to chip away at administrative and technical debt. That list has, dramatically declined over the years, which is great, but we keep chipping away at it, especially the technical debt. But a lot of strides have been made there, of course. In terms of financial focus, the primary issue that we're focused on at the moment, of course, is fundraising progress. And of course, Lee Berkeley Shaw is here and hard at work. We had a wonderful event for some sponsors and prospects just yesterday. But we're also focused on the timeliness and accuracy of the financial statements. And this is one of the reasons that Jay is working hard to recruit someone to be a part-time finance person. The challenge that we have found is that we often get financial statements, they're later than we would like, and then we find errors in them, and they have to go back and forth, or Jay finds errors, and there's this back and forth. And we anticipated that a little bit when that contractor came on board, that third-party firm. But the fact that that has persisted for this amount of time is not satisfactory in our view. And so we're trying to improve upon that. And that's an important one for us. And of course, we did issue a statement on remote participation, which you can see on the blog. In the next slide, of course, the typical board meetings, please join our meetings. I will just say, it is extremely rare that anyone joins our meetings. And I would encourage you to do so. If you are, for example, very outspoken on an issue on Admin Discuss or somewhere else, come to a meeting, ask to be joined or added to the agenda. We would love to have you. It is, disappointing when we hear lots of feedback and discussion on the list, but then we have a topic maybe in the general session, and there's really no one that is joining to comment. So please do join the meetings. We do like your feedback, and it's great discussion when we can have it. So here's the 2022 fiscal budget. This was an interesting one. I think you can put aside the investment portfolio because we're not selling anything anytime soon, and most of your retirement accounts probably look much the same in terms of maybe not the dollar amounts, but the decline. But really the main issue here is on-site meeting registrations. So if we think about when was the 2022 budget set? It was in 2021. We were all still in sort of lockdown mode. People were all working remotely, and we were doing completely hybrid meetings. And so without any kind of precedent historically to say, well, how many people might come back and when, we really had to guess at things. And as in all things, when you guess, you get things wrong. So, looking back at the numbers, Lars hinted at this. Vienna was 300 or so people in person. Philadelphia was roughly double to 600. London was a little below 850 or so, so a little below 900. Now we're at 1,000. So that's a humongous increase in 1 year, 300% or more. But it made it very difficult for us last year because we really just had no idea what people's level of comfort was in returning to in-person, of course, what the virus was doing and so on. And that really was the driver for revenues being down dramatically. And of course, a corollary is the hotel comps and the sort of room penalties that you pay for room blocks. And this has partly motivated some of the work that Jay introduced that was up at Gen Dispatch, to look again at the sort of, room booking policies that sort of come along with and ride the coattails of decisions like One Roof, how close to different hotels have to be and so on. And there's a lot of data that Jay and others have collected about that we'll be using as that work progresses. So we're hoping that we have better predictability for this year. That is the major variable, and hopefully we get to a better level of precision in terms of variance year over year. We'll see. Hopefully, it doesn't get any worse from a health standpoint. And of course, these are all the many, many ways that you can contact us. I think we all know that. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I think we're ready for the next part. Thanks. Well, indeed.
Thank you. And while Glenn makes his way up the stage, I want to point out that the LLC will be back for open mic later, so you can ask questions about anything that Jason and Jay talked about. Over to you, Glenn.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Glenn Dean, and I'm the chair of the IETF Trust. And these are your 5 trustees. I was reappointed by the NOMCOM this year, and as Lars noted, Stefan was reappointed by the ISG. So we have a nice, stable group of trustees managing the IETF's IPR. So what does the IETF Trust do? And this is the question most people don't know. So I keep saying it whenever I get up and do these presentations. We manage the IP assets for the IETF and a few other people, but primarily for the IETF. That consists of all the copyrights on the IETF RFCs. This consists of the, when you make submissions and you do that RFC 5378 part and you get that boilerplate in your IDs, that's us. So since IETF 115, we do licensing. We've issued 0 licenses. That may seem odd for a group that manages IP rights. The reason for that is because that the way the IP rights are structured, there's an automatic license program that basically allows the IETF to make use of its own IP. And there's a series of ways that you can, if you're not part of the IETF, make use of IETF RFCs. For instance, if you take an entire RFC, feel free. Go take the thing, don't modify it, but you can publish it, you can translate, you can do all these things. You don't have to come for an individual license. This is covered in what we call the trust legal provisions, the TLP, and it's on our website. But it's a great model because it means that we don't have to individually negotiate licenses for people. So we've done 0, which is awesome, but our stuff is being used all over the place under license, so it's working. We've done a couple other changes. Problems come up along the way. We discover things that have, fell through the cracks in the past. One of them was a Yang security module template. There's a template out there for these things, and it turns out that they weren't properly labeled inside the RFCs that were published in the past. And so one of the things we've done is we've corrected that. We've got a draft out there in process to formalize the correction, but FYI, I'll cover this a little bit, but there's this new tag or an older tag called template text. If you wrap something inside of an RFC with this tag, it allows you to modify it later on, which is something you normally can't do in RFC, but it sort of turns a little bit of template code there, or section, into something that's a bit more like code, and you can take out of there and use it. We've also renewed a couple trademarks. So one of the things we manage for the IETF and some other parties is trademarks. So since we met in London, we have actually done one for IANA. We did a renewal. And there's the actual trademark for the IETF. We did a renewal for that one in Canada. And the other update is we have published our 2023 budget and guidance for going forward. And I'll cover that in the next slide. And this is a little bit if you want to read about how to use templates text in RFCs. We're planning on doing a proper education session, probably for working group chairs at IETF in San Francisco. So stay tuned. We're going to try to help everybody understand how to use this tool effectively so you can publish templates and make use of them after the publication of an RFC. So this is our budget. There is a bump here if you pay attention to the numbers. 2022 was pretty low. There's this big jump in 2023, and then it goes back down in 2024 as our guidance. Why are we spending so much money in 2023? We're restructuring. We're turning from the IETF from a trust that's in Virginia into a Delaware corporation for a bunch of reasons we've covered previously in a consultation on doing that. But there comes some costs for doing that, so that bumped it up a little bit, lawyers. The other big reason we have a big jump here is one of the things we are doing with the budget is establishing a 2-year reserve. This is basically money we're going to put in the bank, and if we need it for any reasons, we'll have 2 years of reserve to tap into without having to go do individual fundraising to cover like something that happened in a particular year. And so there's going to be this one-time sort of bump in 23 where we build up that reserve to a 2-year limit, and then in 2024 the guidance is that we're going to go back down to pretty much where we were at before we did this restructuring and before we built up the reserve. with some fudge here for inflation, because everybody's feeling the pains of inflation. So as I mentioned, we are restructuring to a Delaware corporation. The corporation has been created. Here's a bit of an update slide where we're at in the process. So we did a consultation back the other year with the community. We're going to go do this. What input, feedback, we got all that, took into account. We created this new entity. That entity is now created in Delaware. So right now we have two things. We have the IETF Trust as a trust in Virginia, and we have the IETF Intellectual Property Management Corporation, that's a mouthful, over in Delaware. We tried to call it the IETF Trust. We originally got permission from them to call it the IETF Trust, but they said you can't call a corporation a trust. That's too confusing. So we had to come up with a new name. So the current status is waiting on, we're working through with the US IRS to get the new corporation established and recognized as a not-for-profit corporation. That's the IETF Trust in Delaware, or sorry, in Virginia, is a non-for-profit entity. So we're trying to create the exact same tax status for the new entity. We don't anticipate this will be any problem. It just takes a little bit of while for the paperwork to run through. So once that's done, we're going to step back and then start the really hard work, which is transferring the assets from the old entity over to the new entity. Does that make sense? And we expect this work to continue on through 2023. So you'll be hearing from me again in San Francisco and in Prague. And that's it. If you want to get a hold of us, here it is. I would tell you our office hours would be coming up, but we actually had office hours today from 3:30 to 4:30. Nobody came and visited us. So we were lonely. So next time we do office hours in San Francisco, we want visitors to come at least say hi.
All right, let's get the LLC back on stage for Q&A. And a thank you for the outgoing leadership. I think it's just the three of us and Sean, who is somewhere, but not here. Sorry? Okay, so apparently the thanks were done, if you paid attention. So we're just going to do the open mic. So if you have a question for the LLC minus Peter and plus Miriam, please come and join us. You're going to sit over there? Okay.
Separation.
Jason should be standing here, but I can. Take this time to move yourselves to the microphones. I don't know. I see people walking around, but I don't know if they're going to microphones.
Walking to the mic.
Hello. Okay. I just question regarding or feedback regarding the childcare. So I think 6 to 7 so far this week, right? So 5 of those were my offspring. So I have a lot of feedback I'd like to give over email, I think you said. But just summarizing 2 main points. First is thank you. It was great. Usually I'm leaving my wife and kids, and right now is a spring break here in Japan. So the kids are all home. And if I'm attending IETF somewhere, they're all going crazy in the house. And my wife is having to figure out what to do with them. So it's nice to be able to bring them and show them the IETF and give my wife a break. So big thank you. And the second point was, I don't know who was doing the sign up, like if it was just kind of all left up to the company or if the IETF was involved, but this time it was a PDF that I had to print out and fill out and then scan and email. So if the IETF can like support them and giving them like a web form or something, it'd be nice. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Put it in the queue for the tools team. Great, thank you. All right, sounds like we've got it. Next, who's up next?
Thank you. Yeah, you with our apologies to our colleagues from the ITU, you should not be needing to use a fax to do this. We're gonna work on this. Right. Next up is the IESG, old and new. Please make your way to the stage. And while they're walking up, I'm going to start saying thank you to Alvaro, and you can already make your way over here if you like, but leave your backpack if you also like. So Alvaro Etano was mentioned earlier by Rich Saltz. He's been serving as a routing director for a very long time. And he was incredibly helpful also personally to me because I had a 10-year gap between being on the ISG as an area director and then being on the ISG as a chair. And things have changed, and also I forget things more now. And so Alvaro was very helpful in sort of reminding me that, you know, things I remember from like the 27-8 period has changed in the meantime, and he's very nice about it. And he was supported by Amy and Cindy, who also helped to remind me. So thanks for that. Alvaro, we have a gift for you, and we also have a plaque, which is, as usual, the fake one that you gotta give me back. The other one's in the mail. So let's give him a hand. This is a tough job to do for 6 years. We're looking at the man who's running to Thank you. Thank you. I left it up to him if he wants to stay up on stage or wants to enjoy his gift, and I think he's going to stay on stage. So thank you for the extra credit at the end there, Alvaro. So this is us. We have an incoming AD on the routing side, which is Jim Gushar. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I will practice it. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that we have another incoming security AD, which is the ISG applying ChatGPT to the security area, and we called him Enforcer. You might have seen him wander around. He's very friendly. He's here to help. He will automatically generate discusses on all of your documents that are coming to the ISG to offload some of the work that the security area has to do, because they really do have to review everything. It's not like transport or something where you look for, you know, does it say timer or window or things like that. What? Sorry?
We're going to call it Ben Kadick.
We're going to call it Ben Kadick.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Sam Hartman's also a good name for that. Anyway, so this is us. This is open mic for the ISG. If you have questions, please come up to the microphones. And I see Ted over there.
Do we do an introduction?
Do we do introductions? Yes, that is an excellent suggestion. Let's start over there with Mr. Klein.
Eric Klein, Internet Area Director.
Jim Guichard, incoming routing AD. Taken over from Alvaro, who I personally want to thank very much, and I got very big shoes to fill. So I'd like to give you a round of applause again for everything you've done, Alvaro.
This would be the time, Alvaro, to pass on the dot.
Yeah.
And we can do the keep going doing the introductions. So the funny thing is, Alvaro's dot is not coming off the badge. It's been there too long.
Jahidul Jamal Sharkar, Transport Area Director.
Rob Wilton, Ops Management Area Director.
Mia Kulewind, IAB Chair.
Paul Wouters, Security.
Alvaro Rotana, outgoing routing AD, and I have some extra dots in case someone wants them.
Give that man a dot. Murray Kucherovi, continuing Art AD.
And Lars Eckert, IETF Chair, and Jen, Area Director.
Eric Wink, Internet AD.
Roman Janelio, Security AD.
John Scudder, Routing Area Director.
Andrew Alston, Routing Area Director.
And we have some people remote. Would you
Kamari, AD. I'm stuck in the hotel with COVID. Whee.
Martin?
Martin Duke, Transport.
And Francesca Palumbini, Art AD with Leonardo.
Hello. Thanks for waiting, Ted, while I was forgetting to do the introductions. It's your turn.
No worries. First, to the audience, I know Alvaro offered you a dot. Let me just warn you, it's a trap. Second, back on slide 21, you pointed out that there was a new policy for interim meetings. And a few slides later, you pointed out there were no appeals. Well, there were no appeals. We did have kind of a conversation about whether the policy on interim meetings might need a bit of a rethink, especially as it regards to letters of invitation, a subject poignantly raised later by Jay. So I would like to ask if the ISG has considered further the matter I placed before them in this regard, and if so, when I might have the favor of a reply.
Point well taken, Ted. So we did discuss it further. So for those of you who are not aware, so we did an update to an earlier statement, or ISG statement, on what we expect in-person and hybrid or remote interim meetings to be like. And one of the changes that we made was a clarification. We thought it was a clarification, and that said that the IETF LLC is not set up to issue invitation letters for interim meetings. And I forget the exact wording, but I think it was implied strongly that the convener of the interim meeting should do so. And that raised some concerns because it wasn't apparently a clarification. It was apparently perceived as a change in policy that wasn't intended. But since we didn't say anything about that previously, I well understood that that's a reasonable reaction. So we did discuss it, and we had a call where Jay, and I don't know if Brad was there, but we certainly talked about it with the LLC. And then there's a few things that came out of this that we still have to get back to you on. One of them was that, so the LLC is a US corporation, and so we are in a position, we would be in a position to issue letters for interim meetings that happen in the United States. But that might actually create a certain easiness to having a meeting there that might centralize interim meetings there, simply because, you know, the LLC can do it in the US but not elsewhere. And we really want to have the ability to have working groups meet elsewhere. So it felt a little bit unfair to other regions for the LLC to do it in one country. It turns out the LLC, depending on which country we're talking about, some of them actually allow a non-local entity to issue invitation letters. And so another approach would be for the LLC to do a legal analysis for every country where somebody wanted the LLC to issue these letters, to figure out whether we can do it, what the constraints are, and basically what we're allowed to say and not to say. And we would over time then sort of build up a allow list of countries, if you will, where the IETF could do that. I think the end of the discussion there, and this is where it stalled because we were getting pretty close to this meeting, was that we weren't actually sure if it's worth the trade-off, because we still couldn't do it everywhere, and we would still then maybe have a sort of, you know, two sets of countries, one where it's easy to do it because the LLC can issue the letters, and one where you know, A, there's maybe extra work and delays, and B, maybe we find out we can't, and then somebody else has to do it anyway. But we do owe you a reply. I fully agree with that.
So thanks about that, but I think you missed some of the discussion that we actually had in the meeting, which was that it's not just the question of whether the LLC issues the letter of invitation, but whether there's a requirement to the host to do so. Because as we pointed out during the meeting, it can be very difficult for the host legal organization to wrap its head around the fact that it has nothing to do with the content of the meeting, it's just providing facilities, and yet it's being asked to both waive any normal NDAs and provide a letter of invitation, which normally says the person receiving it is coming to do business with or have a meeting with that particular organization. So even if you decide that the LLC cannot issue letters of invitation full stop, I still think you need to revisit the policy as it imposes a burden on potential hosts that many of them either will not or cannot meet. And I think that in turn makes it more difficult for us to host interim meetings. So
Correct.
I think perhaps taking a step back and looking at the whole policy again and figuring out whether or not what you've asked the host to do is fair if you're not willing to do it yourself. Thanks.
Correct. And one clarification that I think we could make is that the wording was maybe misleading, because I think we actually meant the convener of the meeting, i.e. the person who, like the chair, who's asking people to come to this interim, because it's not typically a company that's doing that, obviously, or an organization. It's typically the working group chair that is sort of arranging that meeting. We can still talk about whether that's a fair barrier, right? But just to clarify, it wasn't necessarily meant that it's like the venue where the meeting is held should do this.
So that doesn't make any sense, Lars, because the whole point of a letter of invitation is that the person issuing it is able to say that the person that's coming is going to be engaged in a particular type of work. And as you well recall, the ISG has made decisions in the past about limiting issuing letters of invitation to people who had not previously been involved in the IETF without them at least registering and paying. You're now asking individual members of the IETF, the chairs of working groups, to stand up and take individual responsibility for issuing those. That's very strange. And I think you really need, as a group, to go back and rethink this from the beginning if that's your answer.
Fair point. We have actually heard from chairs who've been doing this all along and who thought that was the process. Right, and so it's apparently not a problem for some chairs at least.
That's great.
But we would like to hear from other chairs whether this is a boundary. But so what's your ideal outcome, Ted, if you don't mind me asking?
So my ideal outcome is that you work through the LLC to figure out when you can do it when you can do it. When you can't do it, note to the community that you weren't able to do it because of an issue related to it, but it's proceeding either with host support or some other lack of support and going ahead. But as it stands right now, having done this in other organizations, you can always send a letter supporting something. The formal letter of invitation is slightly different, and if you don't want to do that, I'm totally cool. But I think you can't put the burden on other people if you're not willing to do it. If you're going to say, there's this theoretical problem that maybe more of these happen in one region than another because the LLC can do it there. Let's tackle that when it happens. You're basically putting a burden on other people for a very theoretical outcome compared to other potential issues. Realistically, some of these countries we go to are much easier to get into than, say, the US or Canada. And there will be a natural flight to going to places like Singapore, for example, which is much easier if we're going to start going down that path. But don't bind burdens to the backs of people that you aren't willing to take up yourself. That's just not fair.
It's not so much that we're not willing to do it. I think it's really that the current state of the analysis that we don't know where we can do it other than the US. I think for some countries in Europe, we looked and it's possible for us to do it, but it would, there's a lot of interims that happening, right? And we're also going to go back to in-person more now. And so we need to think this through. It's not clear if it's actually worthwhile or whether it's a theoretical or a practical issue in the end that, it really would favor meetings in some regions versus others. But
So
I
I
also
started
don't
by
want to
asking,
rattle
by
on this
when do you
tonight.
think you will have thought it through? And I
So-
agree that we need to think it through. I'm happy that you're taking the time to do that, but I think you're leaving up a policy right now that's deeply flawed. By when do you think you will readdress this issue?
So it
We
is
need to discuss it.
tentatively on our agenda for our May retreat. I can't promise that we'll have a conclusion at that point, but we're going to spend a significant amount of time on it, I would think.
That's a good suggestion, actually. I don't recall off the top of my head whether it is on the agenda, but if it is not, we can certainly put it there.
We don't have a
And that
final
would
agenda,
allow
but
us-
there's a list of potential topics, and it's on that list of potential topics.
Okay, you're a little bit hard to hear, but I think I got it. Is that an acceptable answer for now?
So what I heard, and I'm sorry, I'm quite far away from him, and it was a little hard for me to hear. What I think I heard was after the retreat, you'll come back to the community?
I think that was said, yeah.
That's
So
great. Thank you very
we
much.
We have time to talk in the beginning of May. And for those of you who know, the retreat is the beginning of May.
No, that's perfectly sensible. Thank you very much.
And I understand that you're a little bit dissatisfied that there were silence for so long. Sorry about that. I think Torles was next. I'm not quite sure.
There's somebody in the queue.
Oh, there's Stephen. Has he been first though, or has Torles been first? It would help us if you could also use the queue tool in the. But okay, so I need to do something here.
So mine's a different topic, so you can finish this one first, maybe.
Oh, you're here. Okay. Is there anybody who wants to speak to that particular topic? Leslie has her hand up. So Torles, if you don't mind waiting just a little bit longer. If Leslie's on the topic, let's go to you.
Leslie Daigle, private individual, and I would have used the Q tool if I could have managed to log in. But I just wanted to agree, I guess, with Ted that it sounds like it's a deeply flawed the current policy is deeply flawed, because what I heard you say was, in order to be a working group chair, I had to be able to write letters of invitation for people to come to an interim meeting. Thinking Cat Enterprises is not in a position to do that. So I mean, I think you need to take a step back and think of the whole picture, and then figure out how to apply the legal mechanics.
Thanks, that's a good suggestion. Just to be clear, so the current policy doesn't say anything about letters of invitation. And the change we made was to clarify that, to clarify what we thought the current situation was. And point taken, we're going to talk about it at the retreat in May. I still think Torres was first, but I haven't looked over there in a long time. So I see nodding for Torres was first, but Stephen's in the queue.
Yeah.
I want to go Torres, because then we're back to Farrell and Nottingham, and that's there, and then let's go.
Go ahead and break the rules.
I'm only going to change the topic slightly. In the wake of the discussion from Ted, I was also starting to get worried about the visa invitation letters for IETF117. And given how we haven't been to the US for several years for exactly the visa reason, at least as in part, one of the interesting data point was there that visa invitations that or visas that were rejected were made to happen with the sponsor getting active with the embassy, right? And I think that would be the, I think, work that I would love to see for the IETF and the host to exercise, so that we don't run into the same situation that we had before we stopped going to the US for 117. And maybe, in this particular case, it is a lot easier for the IETF to issue the invitation letters than any particular host, however good they are, because you folks can build up the knowledge for, how to deal with US embassies much easier than, every time we go there, a different host.
Right, so we got the email. I forwarded it to the LLC because I think it's actually an LLC issue and not an ISG issue. But yes, the second issue was raised that related but wasn't identical to Ted's. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's certainly not something that always works out. But if you, as we've seen evidenced, put your work behind it, you'll probably get more visas through than if you just send an invitation letter off, and if it's a no, it's a no. So
correct. We want to be able to have people from all over come to our meetings, and we're going to try and work towards that. Mr. Farrell.
Hey, Stephen Farrell. So different question. There's a draft SHMU remote fee, which I guess basically just is a very simple thing that says there should be a free remote attendance option, which seemed to kind of not have any controversy in the working group. On IETF last call that I noticed, then it got to you guys, and boom, you had like 5 yeses and 5 abstains, some of which turned into yeses, 200 emails, and it's like a very simple statement. How would you characterize what went wrong, or do you think it was all nothing went wrong?
So that is my document, since I'm Gen 80. If it was that simple a statement, it wouldn't need so much text. So there was a lot more text, and I think that was part of the problem. And partially, some abstains, if I sort of overly simplified and basically said, this could be much shorter. Some said, why does the community feel like they need to give this guidance, which, I don't disagree with, I'm just summarizing it. But the problem really is that and the LLC also had a bunch of concerns about this draft. And, the LLC hasn't formally no say in this, right? Because it's about publication of a document. However, the addressee of the guidance that the document intends to give is the LLC. And so if the LLC indicates that it doesn't quite understand what the guidance means to say, that's sort of a concern. So I send it back to first we actually cycled a little bit in ISG evaluation in a hope that we could address the concerns with patches, but it seemed at the time that it wouldn't resolve. So I decided to punt it back to the working group. So that's the state it's in now. And then I've proposed some text that I wrote to try to be more minimal, and sort of proposed that to see if the working group would agree that that's the way to take forward. I don't think that has concluded. I got asked by the authors whether I would take a small revision to the current document forward again, and I agreed to that. And I'm hoping that it will get better support in the ISG. I find it personally dissatisfying that we're trying to say something very similar that everybody agrees on, and I have like a whole bunch of abstains, right? I think one more and it wouldn't have had enough ballots to pass, which is very dissatisfying for a process BCP. I hope you agree with that so far.
Yeah, I agree. There's something dissatisfying, but I still don't understand how you end up with, like, 5 yeses, 5 abstains turning into yeses. And I think you're right that the way the LLC and the ISG kind of interacted on this is somehow a bit odd, because the community were trying to make a simple statement, and the LLC was kind of suggesting text and changes as well as the ISG, and that seemed a bit mixed up to me.
So I think it really, at the heart of the problem is that it's a simple statement, but it's just using a lot of words to say that simple statement. And I suggested that maybe we could sort of remove some of the words, but I heard some pushback from the working group saying those words were added while we were discussing this, and they shall stay. But I'm intending to move this forward. We'll see.
I'm sure it'll get sorted in the end.
But that's what happened with it, and maybe some other ADs, because I'm speaking constantly, wanna explain their position a little bit, if that might help you.
That might help me. Yes.
I'm happy to speak. So this is Rob Wilton. So I ended up discussing this document for a brief period of time, and it was because for me it felt like it was very prescriptive on setting, telling the LLC how to do this, rather than saying this is what we want to achieve. And for me, I was hoping that the community would say, look, this is what we would like the outcome to be, and would leave it to the LLC to sort that out. Now, the actual discussion I was holding on was on a very particular thing in terms of language about whether the fee, any fee that was charged for remote participation would restrict maybe enabling some other sort of functionality to a limited set of people. So it felt that everyone was trying to get to the same thing, and there's just particular aspects of the text that various members of the ISG were unhappy with. I could have gone to abstain on it, as in not trying to block it and allow it to go through, but that would have meant we would have reached the 5 abstains, and that would have blocked the document. So I went to a discuss to not block the document, so that we could hopefully resolve the text and move it forward. And then there was further discussion. Lars had proposed alternative shorter text that looked better to me, and I think that was sort of the step, as I understood it, as to how it went back to the working group. Also, as part of that process, I think Miri had been working on providing a sort of alternative text to try and resolve my discuss, which I was okay with. But I'd seen some responses on that in terms of whether that had consensus or not. But I was happy with what was in the document and said, yes, I'll remove my discuss, so it's able to progress in that sense. I don't know if that helps.
So I saw the mail go by, so it doesn't help too much because I saw the mail go by. But I guess I'm more asking, have you thought about why this was so difficult? I think partly Lars touched on that. It's like it's this combination of the community want to say something, the LLC are kind of more active than previously would have been the case. I think that's correct. I'm not saying it's wrong that they're more active, but I think it's true they are. And it felt a bit like the ISG was kind of not paying as much attention to the community as maybe it should have, from my perspective. I'm sure that's not what you guys were thinking. But I'd hope you'd kind of consider, was there something that went wrong? Was there some other way that could have been handled better, as opposed to just recounting the history?
I want to do a quick time check because we still have the IAB that needs to come up, and we still have a bunch of people in the queue. So I don't know if it's worthwhile digging deep here. We hear that there's frustration in the community and in the working group that the document got stalled and got kicked back. I will take it forward. We will see what happens.
That's the case. I'm asking you to think about why it was so difficult.
So I tried to explain to you why it was so difficult. I think you're disagreeing with me, but that's all I can say. That's my impression of it. Too many words for too short a message.
I think the same applies to your answer.
It's pretty short though. Mark.
I think Rich had a response on the same topic.
Okay,
Rich,
let's go please to Rich.
I want to change the topic.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Rich Saul is one of the authors. It had fewer words before we tried to respond to the IESG statement. I just want to point that out. It was pretty short. I'm not saying it was short because it got bigger as people tried to remove ambiguities in the working group. And then we went through another cycle of that. That's all.
Correct. I did try to suggest that maybe we remove text that is controversial rather than add more words to it, but that was
Well,
not the approach that
no,
was
what
chosen.
you said was we should maybe start over with a short document. And I'm saying we started with a not so short document. It got bigger in the working group, and then the ISG, with their concerns about ambiguity and direction, made it even bigger. So I think the ISG, some of that.
Anyway,
okay.
Let's switch the topic. Thank you. The concern was certainly heard. And I want to close the mic line after Mark, since we still need the IB to come up.
Mark Nottingham. So during the recent processing of IESG processing of a document, there was a rather persistent discuss regarding the alignment of the output with the charter. And it was based upon different readings of sometimes very small words, single letter words, and sometimes things that weren't in the charter, as I could understand it. It was based upon, out of band agreements. I was surprised by this. I think many other people who were doing the work were surprised by this. And I'm very concerned about it. I think it's very concerning for our community when we have that kind of interaction. So I'm wondering, how does the ISG feel about that? What are you doing to prevent these kinds of misunderstandings and misalignments in the future? Because if a working group goes and does a substantial piece of work and then comes to the ISG and says, oh, well, you didn't follow your charter because we had something different in mind, that's not a great situation. And something we should really try to avoid.
Could you say which document and which working group?
OHTTP.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess, Mark, the question was for me, right?
Well, it's for the ISG as a whole. I think it's responsible to the ISG as a whole.
But you know that I've seen that as an AG member, I am a human being. I react as human being. I sincerely believe that what I wrote in my initial discourse is true. We can disagree. There are words, right? It's not really precise somehow. You will notice that I have changed my ballot on this after discussion, because I think that's the role of an AG as well, is to discuss without uppercase, right? Get a consensus. And talking to the authors here, I think the end up is better than before. So I would say that's okay.
I'm not sure I agree it's better than before, but I think the point is, how do we avoid these misunderstandings?
That's a much broader problem indeed.
Right. And I'd hope that ISG members, when they have these expectations for a charter, that they actually get reflected into the charter. That would be my hope.
So Mark, can I just speak to this? So I think I agree with you in what you're saying. So for me, the key is what's written in the charter text, and that's the sort of process that we're trying to get to, that we all work to agree that text, and that text gets approved, and that's what these sort of things should be evaluated against.
Mm-hmm.
So I do understand at times that with all these things, you occasionally get documents where two people interpret the text differently, and that's a tricky situation. And I guess in those situations, resolving it through dialogue is the answer, really.
Right, but it's tricky here because the ISG is the body who approves the original text. They create the charter, they're responsible for the charter. They're also responsible for interpreting the charter at the end of the process. And so that is a position of considerable power.
And there is always the appeal, right? And people discuss again.
Yeah.
We also have a slight problem that the IESG that approved the charter may not be the one that is interpreting the charter some years later.
Mm.
And it's hard to go back and or look forward and say, I'm going to be on the ISG in 4 years. I'm going to have a say about this now.
Right.
So there's got to be a bit of give and take here.
Thank you. Thank you, ISG. I think the IB is next.
Before the IAB comes to the stage, I'm actually going to the thanks part. So we have 4 outgoing members this time that I would like to thank for their service on the IAB. And I start with Russ White. He joined the IAB for 1 term, so 2 years ago. And he is one of our routing experts there. And I think he made a very good job making the IAB aware about difficulties in routing security. So that's a topic that we're still discussing. And unfortunately, he was not able in his one term to solve this problem. But still a very big thanks from the IAB side. Russ is unfortunately not here, but as a thank you, we will ship him a bottle of sake, and we will also get him these really nice sake glasses with us. So thank you, Russ. Yes, but it's okay. And then I would like to thank Deborah. So Deborah also joined for one term 2 years ago, and she's been very active. She acted first as a Nomcom liaison, and then she was also active in liaison coordination and in our new formed ISOC coordination group, because she was serving us very well with her experience from other organizations, especially the ITU. So thank you for being on the IAB. And I would like you to come up here, because I have a nice sake bottle for you to give you. This is your bottle. Yeah, all right. And then you also have it for a photo.
I got it already.
All right. Sorry, I'm still wearing it. Thank you. You can stay here. Get my stuff. Yes. Okay, and then I would like to thank Robin for his service. He was serving on the IAB for two terms, so 4 years. One of the other routing experts we have. He was also active helping in the aid workshop. He was active as a BOF shepherd, and he was especially trying to promote in the IETF in China, so being very dedicated to that part. Thank you, Robin, for serving on the IAB. This one. You get a plaque per mail. Okay. This is, you get one per mail. You don't have to carry it. Okay. Okay, and last, it's Yari Ako, who's been serving on the IAB for three terms, so 6 years, and he was like extremely active on there. He organized multiple workshops, either as a chair or as a program member, and he was a member of the IANA group and also co-chair of RC 9120 about operations of name servers for Upper. He was sharing the Model T program, and he was authoring a couple of IAB drafts, and so on, and so on, and so on. So you get a bottle of sake, but we will ship you something extra, because originally we discussed like we should go skiing with you or whatever, but that would have been like slightly too expensive. There isn't indoor skiing here, but I think you've done that already as well, right? So, and the timing was a little bit difficult. So what we want to get you is actually a little bit of a ski hat with an IAB branding. So every time you go skiing, you will hopefully remember the IAB. Thank you. Let me take a picture. You can stay here. Yes. Okay, and with that, I ask the rest of the IAB to join the stage. And we start with introductions from this side this time.
Colin Jennings.
Dhruv Dhodi, IAB.
David Skenazy, continuing internet architecture enthusiast.
Colin Perkins, IETF chair.
Wes Herdeker, IAB.
Wu, IAB.
Still Mia Kuleman, IAB chair.
How did you still not?
No, but
just speak. Okay, Lars Eggert, IETF chair.
Alvaro Rotana, incoming IAB.
Deborah Brungard, outgoing.
Jari Arko, continuing internet architecture enthusiast, but outgoing IB member.
Okay, Chen Mianli, outgoing IAB.
Chris Wood, incoming IAB.
Suresh Krishnan, incoming IAB.
Tommy Polly, continuing IAB.
Mallory Nodal, continuing IAB.
And Jian Kang, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, Jian Kang Yao IAB.
Okay, we start the open mic. Yes, Spencer, sorry, you're in the queue.
Yes, I'm Spencer Dawkins, and I just wanted to thank the current and hopefully future and past IEBs for the amount of effort you've made in making what the IEB is doing more visible to the community and more accessible to the community. I especially appreciate the even tonight when you're talking about the side meeting for the liaison coordinators. I mean, again, that's new. So it's not that you've been doing a good job, it's that you've continued to do a better job for a period of years, which has continued up to this week. I just wanted to thank you all for that.
Thank you. I see my timeline slides really worked out.
I'd like to point out that a lot of that is Miria's fault for doing such a good job of making the IAB generally more open. So I have to thank her for that in general. All of our meetings are, have been open and transparent, except for very few executive sessions that have to be private. But we've pushed really hard to make everything happen. And the IAB open session, I think, was all Maria's idea. So thank you.
But you can also ask questions if you want. Or you can come to IAB Open tomorrow if you want a more cozy atmosphere to talk to us. Okay, then let's have dinner. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.